On the news, court fixes October 4 to hear NBA suit against federal government on Twitter ban. CBN bans sale of forex to Bureau change operators. And federal government threatens to prosecute passengers who abscond from quarantine. A warm welcome to you and thank you for joining us. I am Folashade Ogurinde. Again, the federal government has said it has no plan to gag the press. Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed reiterated this at the opening of a two-day 2021 edition of the annual roundtable on cultural orientation by the National Institute for Cultural Orientation in Ilorin, Kwara State. Mohammed said the government's plan to regulate social media in the country is in furtherance of national interests, which is in line with global best practices. He said the phenomenon of fake news and hate speeches, which has dominated the social media space, is detrimental to the nation's peace, security and national cohesion, adding that no responsible government will allow social media as a tool to destabilize the nation. In a related development, a federal high court in Lagos has fixed October 4 to hear a suit by the Nigeria Bar Association (NBA) challenging the legality of the federal government's suspension of the operations of microblogging and social media website Twitter. The incorporated trustees of NBA filed a suit following the government's threat to prosecute Nigerians who defy the directive by continuing to use Twitter. The NBA, through its 7-member legal team led by Charles Makunye, is seeking 11 reliefs. They include a declaration that the ban or suspension of Twitter is unlawful. It is also seeking a declaration that the ban affects the business, employment and economic activities of lawyers and Nigerians generally, and another mandating all mobile network and internet service providers to unblock the use of the microblogging and social media site. A former United Kingdom-based trader for Glencore plc, Anthony Stimler, has pleaded guilty to bribing Nigerian officials in exchange for favorable contracts from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation and NPC. Stimler admitted to conspiring to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and commit money laundering at a hearing in Manhattan Federal Court, New York on Monday. Glencore is one of the 50 oil traders selected to lift 950,000 barrels of Nigerian crude oil on the various contracts from July 1, 2018 to June 2019. Prosecutors said millions of dollars in bribes were paid to Nigerian officials in exchange for NNPC awarding contracts and more lucrative grades of oil on more favorable delivery terms to the Anglo-Swiss mining company. In 2017, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, received $94 million from Glencore being paid for crude oil sold to the company. When the Boko Haram insurgency broke out in Nigeria in 2009, both the citizens and the government did not foresee that the carnage and terror would linger for so long. Now it's been 12 years since the country has been battling with insurgency, kidnapping and other vices with hope to win the war, but the impact of the conflict is still hitting the country hard. Our correspondent Mary Kano in this next report chronicles some of the activities of the terrorist group in the last 12 years.
What started off as mere whispers on the streets of Maiduguri 12 years ago has snowballed into the #1 terrorist organization in Nigeria. The Boko Haram sect has come a long way since the death of its first leader, Mohammed Yusuf, which compelled the group into not only seeking to avenge his death, but also launching incessant attacks across the country's north community by community. Yusuf's successor, Abubakar Shekau, led vicious attacks that left hundreds of thousands homeless, thousands dead, and left the government with a monumental humanitarian crisis. The group is also notorious for attacks on state establishments, and its onslaught received more international attention following an attack on the United Nations building in Abuja, the nation's capital, in 2011, where about 21 people were killed, with many others injured. Another incident which still lingers is the abduction of more than 200 Chibok schoolgirls in Borno State in 2014, which sparked global outcry and the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls movement. Again in 2018, another set of schoolgirls were also abducted, this time in Dapchi, Yobe State. Since then, the Boko Haram insurgency has continued, with the insurgents spilling over to neighboring Niger and the Lake Chad Basin.
Terrorists and criminals must be fought and destroyed relentlessly so that the majority of us can live in peace and safety.
The anti-insurgency war has come at a huge cost, not only in terms of lives lost, but also finance. Could the events of the past 12 years, which saw the rise of Boko Haram, have been avoided?
To bring this war to an end, there is an element that is missing sorely, that is intelligence. That intelligence component has been missing, particularly human intelligence.
If we sit down and enter into the minds of the insurgents, we'll begin to have insight that will inform what we do. But most of the time, what I see is the authorities sit down in the Federal Capital Territory and just sound off their statements, whereas these insurgents do what they have to do and claim they're in ground zero.
We've mentioned it time and again that it is not only kinetic force that is going to solve this problem. There are other root causes that will lead us to solve this problem in other ways.
The Nigerian Armed Forces has also suffered losses. The insurgents have killed several personnel in ambush, with scores of equipment damaged.
What the Boko Haram incident has showed us that you do not wait until war comes, then you start acquisition, because it is too late. That is what we are suffering now. We are acquiring while we are fighting. It is not easy.
But with the arrival of the first batch of the Super Tucano aircraft to Nigeria, experts say the Nigerian troops have gained an upper hand.
So the federal government trying to raise the numbers of platforms that the Nigerian Air Force has is something to be celebrated. The Tucano is one of the few aircraft in the world that is right from design. It was made for counterinsurgency and irregular warfare.
Nigeria's military warfare against insurgents continues. As troops battle in the forefront, thousands of Nigerians displaced by the war hold on to hope of when they can return to a home devoid of insurgents. Mary Kanu, TV360, Nigeria.
Now let's now head back to the earlier story of a former United Kingdom-based trader for Glencore PLC, Anthony Stimler, who pleaded guilty to bribing Nigerian officials in exchange for favorable contracts from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC. Now, Stimler admitted to conspiring to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and commit money laundering at a hearing in Manhattan Federal Court, New York, on Monday. Now, I'm being joined by human rights expert, Mr. Larry Suraj, who will tell us more about this development. Now, what do you think, what do you make of this issue? Now, recall that oil, of course, makes a very large part of Nigeria's earnings. Now, you know, this sector has recorded lots and lots of corruption cases. How do you think this will impact, in the long run, the Nigerian economy?
Thank you for having me. I think it's actually major challenge, unfortunately, for the country, where it's obvious that operators in just not in NNPC, but the same thing with the government officials, that would go down to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, indicting the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources at that time, and by extension, even the minister itself, which is the president. So the president would have a reason to now reflect if he's going to what is occupation of that office as the Minister of Petroleum Resources to double as the president. or it would need to get someone who can clearly oversee the situation in that place. Nigeria cannot afford to be dogged by recurring reports of corruption, bribery, and sharp practices in the oil sector. We have to be moving forward. I mean, this is really sad that, Glencore, who benefited even as early as 2018, had issues with cases of bribery involving the NNPC and oil lifting in Nigeria. I mean, the other challenge for us is the fact that what you're seeing happening with the DOJ in the US with the breach of the FCPA, it's not really going to benefit Nigeria as a country or Nigerians. It is just going to be an indictment that would happen in the United States without having any recourse to either the loss of the license or the payment of appropriate due to Nigeria, but rather a loss that we have incurred and also that Nigeria would have suffered. And there would really be, hardly would there be any prosecution that would happen in Nigeria. I mean, because some of these in conspiracy with many of the Nigerians. And the FCPA thing does not also take into consideration the conspirators that are also in Nigeria. We've had the experience with Ali Burton, Julius Berger, and the rest of them in the past, which amounted to just an indictment that is suffered only in the United States, and nothing comes here. So I think this would be a challenge to all of us as Nigerians to hold more accountable the people that have been elected into office to administer our natural resources, to ensure that we do not just get the value for the resources, but that we are not allowed to be exposed to this level of international opprobrium that is associated with securing contracts in Nigeria. It's clearly just showing that for you to get any contract or any oil license, especially in the oil sector, which is the mainstay of the economy, it has to be associated with payment of bribes to people that are in office and the heavily compromising of the lay down extant law and rules and regulations in the country.
Well, very well, Mr. Suraj. And we certainly hope that this doesn't become another protracted litigation, just as we saw at the Malabo case. But thank you very much for your time on the news. Moving on now, along with insurgency in the country's north, there is also the growing threat of armed banditry in various parts of the country. In the southeast, 6 bandits were on Monday night killed when the police and unknown gunmen engaged in a gun duel at Omono town in Uru East local government area of Imo State. The latest attack on Omuma, which is the hometown of the Imo Governor Hope Uzodimma, claimed the life of the divisional police officer of Omuma Police Division. Fatman Dolu, a chief superintendent of police, confirming the incident. The command's public relations officer, Michael Abatan, said no fewer than 3 vehicles were also recovered as police arrested 11 suspects in respect to the repelling attack. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabor, has been inaugurated as the patron of the Sahel Military Games scheduled to take place in Nigeria in October. During his inauguration by a delegation of the Organization of Military Sports in Africa, OSMA, in Abuja, General Irabor hailed sports as a unifying tool for the promotion of peace across the world. In his remarks, the president of OSMA board, Brigadier General Maikano Abdullahi, said that the upcoming Sahel Games is to encourage military integration and promote peace, especially in the Sahel sub-region of Africa.
I look forward to hosting this game and believing that it surely will contribute significantly to the actualization of the political mandate, which is to create the conditions of peace in order for our citizens, that is both Nigeria and across the entire countries of the Sahel and Africa in general, for them to live in peace and harmony and to be able to achieve their heart desires in terms of socio-economic activities.
It's a shallow championship of football, golf, and marathon race, full marathon race. And it will take place here in Abuja. And the Chief of Defense Staff is the chief host of this event. The patron of this game is the Honorable Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. And we have the awesome patron, which is the Honorable Minister of Special Duties.
We know that you can use sports, to unite a society. We know today in our country, we have issues here and there, security issues, but we know through sports we can get these young people who may be one way or the other, they have been maybe disgruntled or misled by people. So we know with unity in sports that you can build a better society.
We'll take a break here, but still to come, Nigeria's table tennis team crash out of Tokyo 2020 Olympics.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On TV360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians are saying in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
TV360, dissecting the issues.
And let's take a recap of some of our top stories. The federal government has again said it has no plan to gag the press. Minister of Information and Culture Lai Mohammed says the government's plan to regulate social media in the country is in furtherance of national interest, adding that no responsible government will allow social media be used as a tool to destabilize the nation. A former United Kingdom-based trader for Glencore PLC, Anthony Stimler, has pleaded guilty to bribing Nigerian officials in exchange for favorable contracts from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC). Glencore, an Anglo-Swiss mining company, is one of the 50 oil traders selected to lift 950,000 barrels of Nigeria's crude oil on the various contracts from July 1, 2018 to June 2020. In case you missed any of our news bulletin, or for more updates, do log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube and Google Plus at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we are at TV360 Online. The federal government has vowed to sanction returning passengers who abscond from quarantine facilities, including possible prosecution of such individuals. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the Minister of Health, Osage Ehanire, raised concerns over reports from port health officials that some passengers from high-risk countries have continued to abscond from facilities where they are quarantined. Osage further explained that with the world witnessing an increase in reported cases of COVID-19 across a significant number of countries, such persons constitute a major risk to the country's health system. We'll take another break here and return with more stories and business to stay with us. Well, up next is business news and stock market review with Mary Kanu. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you very much, Folashade. And now in business, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has banned the sale of forex to Bureau de change operators in the country. CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele announced the ban at a press briefing after a meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the bank on Tuesday. Emefiele said BDC operators have become a conduit for illegal financial flows, working with corrupt people to conduct money laundering in Nigeria. He said the CBN will no longer continue registration of new BDCs and current allocation will be channeled to commercial banks. Also, the Apex Bank at its MPC meeting decided to retain the monetary policy rate at 11.5%. It also voted to retain cash reserve ratio at 27.5% and retain liquidity ratio at 30% in line with the recommendation of the International Monetary Fund. Well, joining me now to speak more on this is Margaret Ogundano, a former Deputy Director of the CBN. Thank you for joining us on the news. Now, were you expecting a change in monetary policy rate, especially since inflation rate has declined in 3 consecutive months?
Thank you for having me. I want to say that I wasn't expecting that the benchmark rate, which is also known as the MPR, that is the monetary policy rate at 11.5%, will not have changed. Why I'm saying this, I don't know where you got those factuals that the inflation rate has moderated down. In principle, we still have a lot of inflationary trends, depending on which segment of the market in the Nigerian economy you are looking at. But be that as it may, when you look at those facts you also gave us, that the CRR retained at 27.5, liquidity ratio 30%, the central bank would not have increased the MPR rate given many circumstances. Many circumstances, by that I mean in our society today. In the first instance, the MPR at 11.5% is a benchmark rate. And now look at the food security problem. Many a times you go to the market, prices of food items have changed. So we have what is known as implicit inflation, which is also different from the official inflation. Implicit inflation can be driven, for instance, by the foreign exchange, the transactions, the pressure on the naira can be a fact in driving implicit inflation. That is on goods and services. So if central bank decided to retain the MPR at 11.5%, it has areas where that won't apply, and that is likely to check the level of liquidity in the system. And there's no liquidity really, because there's implicit inflation dangling there, especially with respect to consumables in the Nigerian economy.
Oh, okay, so from the monetary policy rate, how do you also see this new directive on sales of forex impacting the foreign exchange market?
Unfortunately, it's going to put more pressure on the naira, because those of them at the BDC, that is at that segment, consumers or people who need dollars, when you get to the bank, the banks may not have. Why? Because at the bank, the rate is usually official. The alignment between the rate you get in the bank and the one you get at the BDCs, I mean, talking as somebody who, let's say we want to go and buy $1, they will sell it to you at 503 or 500 naira. But in the bank, they will sell it to you at that rate, but it may not be available. Why? Because of the shortages of the foreign exchange earnings by the nation. And that one is informed first by the global problems, starting with the pandemic, which we've been having since 2019. And secondly, when you have that, the declining sales, the declining preferences, the declining sales of the oil, of the Nigerian oil at the international market means it has a cascading impact on the revenue derivable to the government. So there's no forex. So government is not earning enough foreign exchange to satisfy the yearnings at the local level. So if they are banning it, that is, they are going to stop selling to the BDC operators, I think it may have a very inflationary impact, shall I say. It will increase the pressure on the naira, and that means to get the dollar will be a little bit more difficult than what we have now.
You're very correct.
Operators,
you were really correct. Former Deputy Director of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Margaret Ogudana, thank you very much for joining us on the news. Well, we'll take a break here, and when we return, it's Talk Market Review. Don't go away. About 24 billion naira knocked off the total value of listed equities as the bear keeps its hold on the market. Now, the market saw 0.12% taking off its overall gain of previous day's trading by the close of today's trading. Now, as a result of this downtrend, 20 losers led by UPDC Real Estate Investment Trust and NPF Microfinance Bank led the list of top losers. Now, on the activity chart, deals dipped to 4,326, while volume and value dipped even further compared to Monday's trading. Now, analysts are saying a lot of investors are staying on the sideline while monitoring the current trend before making major decisions. Now, despite today's losses, Owando and Fitsin led 20 other equities to top the gainers chart with about 84 kobo gains. Now, moving on to the global scene, it is a mixed trading day for foreign stock as UK stock FTSE is currently trading in the reds, weighed down by insurance and consumer goods equities, which sees FTSE trading at 0.42%. US stock, meanwhile, Dow Jones is also trading in the red at 0.55%. Meanwhile, Asian stock has managed to keep its head above waters as it's currently trading at 0.49%. Well, that's all on today's review of the stock market. Folashade, it's over to you now for the rest of the news.
Well, moving on now to other stories. We'll take a short break here and return with more. Stay with us.
Corruption not in my country.
It's about the files your secretary presented to me regarding the company's salary. Yes, the figures don't seem to add up. I suspect there's some form of a
discrepancy.
Precisely, sir.
Keep the figure that way.
That's fraudulent, sir.
That's my money.
I'm sorry, sir. I can't do that, sir.
See how padded your teeth are. Are you telling me you cannot pad up figures?
Sir, padding is against best auditing practices, and it's a form of corruption.
It's true. Accountant.
You were testing. Thank you, sir.
That's it. Bagole.
Yes, sir.
You are fired.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine, sir. Rather than watch corruption grow under my watch. Padding is a form of corruption and not in my country, sir.
Corruption not in my country.
Stop corruption now.
And now to sports. Nigeria's Aruna Quadri has been knocked out from table tennis men's singles event at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Quadri lost 4-2 to Brazil's Gustavo Tsuboi in Achilles' fourth contest. With his defeat, all Team Nigeria's representatives in table tennis have been knocked out from the Olympics. Joining us now to discuss more on the exit of Team Nigeria's table tennis team from the Olympics is Eniton Obadino, a sports analyst. Thank you very much for joining us on the news. Now, quickly, why do you think things turned out this way for Team Nigeria? Would you have thought the table tennis team will be this short?
Oh, thank you for having me on the news. We had a lot of expectations, especially on Aruna Quadri. We thought that I was reading an interview he had just before the Olympics where he talked about having the best preparations leading to this Olympic. But in game of table tennis, we tend to have surprises that we don't expect, and as such, that's what we saw. From 4 years ago, it was Aruna Quadri pulling the surprise on the rest of the table tennis world. Now he's on the receiving end. It was unexpected, especially for Aruna Quadri. Others, yeah, I didn't think their talent level is at that level for the Olympics to compete with the best. They were just rubbing shoulders. But for Aruna Quadri, we expected a lot from him, but that didn't happen. And basically, his Aruna Quadri that can tell us what's going on through his head, why he lost that game.
What about other sports? Are you envisaging a situation where other teams might be knocked out of the Olympics, or are you seeing a situation where there will be a rebound?
With the ouster of Arda Kodri, basically our better hopes has gotten slimmer, in the sense that we can now look at athletics, maybe the African record holder in the long jump, talking about Essie Bumi, has got a good chance based on her distance that she has jumped so far this year. And a 50-50 for in the 100 meters women's hurdles for us also with Tobiloba Muson. But in all, our chances are slimmer, especially for other sports. Basketball, we were excited about basketball at the beginning, leading to the Olympics. But hey, we got brought back down to Mother Earth with the first result. But a lot can still happen in basketball. Overall, the way I look at it, our chances are very slim in other sports that we're expecting. Of course, not forgetting wrestling, but so far so good. Oda Yadekoye in wrestling has not, at one championship level, she has constantly delivered at least a silver or bronze. But at her last Olympics, she didn't even get to the medal zone at all. So I think the psychology of competing at this stage should also be looked at for our athletes if they are really mentally prepared, because one fight, you are out.
Well, very well, sports analyst Anita Obadano, thank you so much for your contributions. And it's a wrap on our news bulletin. Thank you for watching. I am Fola Shadi Ogurinde. Bye for now.